Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 13 of the Hot Path Show. I'm Johnny, joined in by Tobias. Welcome in, Tobias. How's it going?
It's going all good. All good.
Fantastic, fantastic. And by the way, congratulations on the release of your game, Just Read the Instructions. I know we were talking about it last week, and it sounded like there was a little bit of difficulties with Steam, getting it onto the Steam store and everything. But you finally did get it launched, so very much congratulations to that. So how does it feel?
It feels very good to, I mean, get it over with. It's a little bit of the feeling because it's taking so long. But no, it feels great to take it all the way to shore. It's a lot more nuanced details and shit and stuff to take care of than you realize before you go through it. So it feels good to get all the way.
Yeah, 100%. And yeah, if any of you missed it last week, again, we did kind of go into detail on some of the technical aspects of how you created some of your core systems in your game. Just read the instructions. And then today, I'm going to have you, you said you want to do like a little bit of a post-mortem, just kind of like doing some kind of high-level thoughts, just kind of about like the development and launch of your game and everything like that, right?
Yes. Perfect.
Awesome. Well, that sounds great to me. And by the way, the game Just Read the Instructions. You can get it down in the link in the description below, but it is available on Steam, so go pick it up. It is on a little bit of a launch discount, so you can get $1 off on it. So, yeah.
Something, just so it shows up in the right lists,
Exactly.
Yes.
And then that's not the only thing we're going to be talking about today. We're doing some other data-oriented technology stack-related things. So as you can see, that the main topic of this show is going to be about Boids in Unity Dots. A while back, I had actually created a video where I made Flappy Bird using 10,000 birds. And in that video, it was a fun video, and I liked doing it a lot. But I didn't really show a lot of the code and like technical aspects of kind of how I did it like that. So in today's video, I just wanted to kind of like showcase kind of some of the Boids portion of that to make the birds kind of all flock and avoid each other and everything like that. So it's a pretty simple Boids implementation, but I think it's like a good way to kind of get you exposed to what Boids are and how you kind of generally set them up in a Unity ECS project. So yeah, with that, we can get into kind of some of our miscellaneous announcements before we kind of get into some of the more main topics here. So one thing that I did want to point out is that, actually, let me just bring this up on my channel real quick here. And I can kind of show what's going on screen here. So the other day I put up a poll on my YouTube channel asking people, just kind of gauging interest on what people want to do for the next community event, whether they want to do a more traditional game jam or a community challenge. The difference being a game jam is where you create a game with dots over some short period of time, but the community event would be similar to, or the community challenge would be similar to what we did for the previous community challenge, where I had everyone create a version of Conway's Game of Life using Unity dots. And I was actually pretty surprised that the results of this are pretty split 50-50. I mean, they're really close. It's slightly edging in the terms of the community event right now, but if you do want to sway the poll one way or another, make sure you go to the community tab on my channel to go ahead and vote on that poll. I'm not necessarily going to go with the the exact winner, but this is just kind of like to gauge my interest for the next community event. And I do think that it was really cool that it seemed that people liked the community challenge format of that. So it's something a little bit more different than a traditional game jam. So yeah, definitely think that both game jams and community events are on the table for our next event or events in the future. So yeah, Tobias, do you have any thoughts on the future community events? If there's any type of event that you would want to see, or what?
I am a sucker for game jams. I gotta say, I made so many. I just like the idea of like having something that's hopefully sort of fun in the end. And I mean, community challenges where you go on some specific topic. I don't mind that at all. But I don't know. I like I like having something very strange playable in the end.
Yeah. I think this kind of sums it up nicely. It's nice to see how to see how people create different or solve different problems with ECS as a way to learn, but game jams are fun too. Yeah, I
Yeah,
completely agree with that.
that's fair. That's fair.
Yeah. Also, do want to point out that Unity is doing a live dots question and answer. It's going to be happening on April 24th. Looks like they're doing it live on their Twitch channel as well as their YouTube channel. Earlier this week, they did a webinar where it was like, they said it was how to convert a game from a game object project to a dots-based project. Unfortunately, I had a conflict, so I wasn't able to actually attend that webinar. If anyone here was able to attend the webinar, feel free to just kind of share some high-level thoughts on it in the chat there. But yeah, I think the live Q&A is going to be kind of like a follow-up portion of that. And yeah, hopefully the replay for that webinar will be available soon, so I can just kind of check it out and see what was going on in there. But yeah, so anyways, there is going to be a live Q&A happening this coming Wednesday, again, April 24th. I think it's 9 a.m. Pacific time. Yeah. But yeah. And then, yeah, anyways, you can, by the way, you can support us over on Patreon if you do want to. We have some cool bonuses there for people who do want to support us. I recently did a bonus video talking about my experience when I was at GDC. And then on kind of one of the higher level support levels, I did just kind of almost a podcast where I was just me kind of talking about my journey into Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Just kind of talking about like, why I train it and, how I think it kind of benefits me overall, and just kind of goes to, talking about just kind of, challenging yourself a little bit. So I think that was just kind of like a fun one to do. Also going to be having a new bonus video going up probably next week. Haven't finalized exactly on the topic, but I have a couple good ideas, and yeah, so go ahead and be on the lookout for that. And then also I'm going to be putting up a new Q&A post for some of the higher level tiers as well. So again, you can check that out over at patreon.com/turbomakesgames. So yeah, with that, we can get into our warm-up topic here. So the warm-up topic that I have for today is I do want to talk a little bit about AI tools for game development. Kind of just want to gauge your experience with them. Have you used them before? Do you kind of want to continue using them? Do you think they're good for certain things or bad for other things? One of the reasons that I did kind of want to talk about this is Unity actually just recently did an update to some of their Muse tools. They had kind of talked about this a little bit during GDC, where one of the big things that they recently implemented is a basically project aware Muse chat. So Muse chat is kind of like something similar to like a chat GPT, where you can just kind of like, ask it questions and you'll receive answers to them. So now these things are actually kind of built into the editor. And one of the benefits that supposedly gives you is that, when you ask the Muse chat some questions, it kind of has the context of your full specific project. So I do think it's an interesting idea. I haven't used it, so I don't know how effective it is and how good it is at fine-tuning those answers for your specific needs. But that's at least kind of the idea. And so yeah, by the way, at muse.unity.com, you can get a 15-day free trial for that to give it a test. But yeah, just kind of wanted to talk a little bit about AI tools for development in general. So yeah, before we get kind of into some specific things, like, do you kind of have any high-level thoughts on AI tools for game development?
Yeah, I have quite a few. I think it should be used in the right context. I think uh, it works very well for web development. I feel like, because web development, not to put anybody like down, but like there's not a huge variety and freedom in how to make a proper website if you use like React or some other framework. And if you have an AI assistant, then it will like help you write the code, a lot of not necessarily boilerplate code, but code that needs to be in most websites. But I in my experience with the different helpers, I haven't really had that big of a help, except for like just, oh, what's the name of the algorithm that does this, and then I implemented myself.
Yeah.
But I will say that one thing I think, I should say, and video image generation. I think Jonathan Blow had a point where he like, well, it's really good, but uh, unless you want something exact, and that's my feeling too. It's like if you are just brainstorming, then it's very very good. But if you just want something specific, you can put in so many words into that prompt and it will still not show you, because it doesn't know what it's supposed it doesn't know what it is, because maybe you're
Right.
creating
Yeah.
something inherently new. But yeah, I can just for a quick second, I can share something on my screen here,
Yeah,
if you don't mind.
absolutely. Yeah, if you have something to
Yes.
share, that'd be great.
Let's see here if I can get we just do like this and I'll grab over. So this is stuff that I generated with Midjourney to think about the concept about my next game.
Ooh.
Uh, yeah, and also this one, I'm leaning between one of these two art styles, which is the complete opposite of each other.
Yeah, one's all kind of cute and
uh,
funsy, and the other one is kind of like almost
the,
like
the,
PS2 looking, kind of
yeah,
a
yeah, yeah.
little more gritty.
This is because if you look through some Steam data accumulation sites, there's a genre quite new called boomer shooters, and it's very popular.
Yeah.
And this is boomer shooters, so I'm like, and I have also this one. So it's like something like this or
So even
something.
had even those the boomer shooter kind of lower poly ones, those were all
Yeah,
generated with mid.
but I had
That's
to
really
like
good.
I had to put in like a style reference into Midjourney to make it do
Okay.
this. Yeah. Otherwise, it spits out. It doesn't understand this.
So
But yes,
how do you put in that style reference? Is that like you
it's
actually
like a
just
dash
found some
dash and like
images or
yeah, it's like dash dash and then like acronym, 4 words, 4 letters. I don't remember. And then after that, you just put in the address to image. So
oh,
I
okay,
just
cool.
googled PS1 graphics and I chose something that had at least similar color variations and like similar sort of, if I want to make a third person shooter like this, then I find something where it's like a person, dark, and he's holding a gun and it's sort of the same color space that I want, and I use that as a style sheet, and then I just put in the prompt like chickens, guns, farmer, old, dark, and then this comes out.
I
So
like it.
this is
It did good with like the sky too. Like it kind
yeah,
of
yeah,
the
yeah.
sky kind of matches that style that you would expect.
It is pretty. Yeah, and this is like like I couldn't ask it to specify to do this specifically, but I can
Right.
ask it for like I want to maybe make a game where I run around as a farmer and shoot chickens, and he's high on mushrooms. That's why I'm shooting chickens, by the way. That's part of the game idea. Like if I just have that concept, and then Midjourney would just like spit out a few like concept things, which will take my industry colleagues like several days to work out these type of things.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
This
Because
takes a
it's
long
kind of hard
time.
to do like a hand drawn concept of something like that because you are basically using like 3D models.
Yeah,
So you would think that like even just to get that image, someone would need to like kind of model out the houses and the fence and the
yeah, exactly.
the person and get them all textured and everything.
Yeah, and so yeah, it's exactly, it's like it just to get some idea, and oftentimes this is so much many times in life in general, and like in the game development, it's not about finding necessarily the exact right thing. It's about understanding what your game or thing is not supposed to be like. Okay, this is not it. And because there's so much elimination when you try to figure out exactly what you want to do, and then you can take help with Midjourney and like, okay, I like that sky, but I don't like those things. Oh, I like that gun, but I don't like that thing. And you can like sort
Right.
of narrow it
Yeah.
down, but you will. It's impossible to make these AI image generators to generate exactly what you want. That's what you need an artist to do.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah, exactly. Because yeah, it's like how often do you have like some kind of thought in your head about like, oh, I wonder, how this would look. And it's like, okay, you can go through a bunch of iterations of that and kind of look and kind of like, fine tune that to get that look that you're going for, without really having to spend a whole lot of money on,
No,
hiring artists and going back and forth and everything. And
this is this is like free compared to having an artist. This is
right.
like
Yeah,
100
exactly. Yeah.
$10 a month. And finally, just another thing is to get excited about projects. Sometimes you need like some more stuff. So this is this is like the icon, project icon that I generated for the game, where just so I can just put it everywhere. So I just have an icon, which when I see it, I just get excited and inspired. So that type of a thing, I think, is it's a very good use of AI.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No. I definitely like that a lot. Yeah.
Just before we end that, chat, which one of these two? So low PS1 style graphics or new kind of I don't know what to call it. If you have an idea, just write it down and say which one you would rather play. Yeah. PS1, all right, we got one.
I got one vote
For a boomer. Well,
PS1.
not necessarily for a boomer shooter. Maybe I don't even want to make a boomer shooter, but like if you had a game where you're supposed to where you're
Yeah, you're just kind of figuring out, like, you have the core idea, but you're kind of figuring out like the style and setting that it's going to be in and everything.
Exactly. Yeah. So do you agree with my assessment, or do you feel like there's some more deeper use for it right now?
Yeah, so I definitely agree with the point that, like, especially when it comes to image generation, that it's good for kind of like doing general things. You can like kind of combine things in different and in interesting ways. You can test out different styles in, with similar kinds of objects. But then as soon as you get to like, really specific things, that's where it kind of ends up falling short, where it's like, okay, you want to make some like very specific change to the image. It's kind of difficult to do that. So it's like, hard to kind of use it for a lot of production things. Of course you can, if you want to start doing a lot more kind of work with like Photoshop or something like that, where you're maybe kind of generating some things out separately and kind of, combining them all manually yourself, and again, kind of doing some tweaks to the style and coloring and lighting and everything like that to make sure everything kind of like looks good all in that one image. It's kind of more work that you kind of end up having to do with that. But yeah. And then as far as I guess like code tools, or even just kind of more like along the lines of the chat, because that's kind of something that we brought up with the some of the Muse tools and the kind of project context aware stuff. Definitely, like, at least when I had used Unity Muse, and I think this is still probably the case now, is that it hadn't been trained on the latest versions for any DOTS things. So when I asked it DOTS things, I mean, it was like literally giving me answers for like, DOTS like 0.5, like not even 0.50, like the 0.5, like before, like, 0.17, which is like a big version. So it was like very, very outdated stuff.
That's still what V Rising is made on, I think, by the way.
I think you're right. Yeah.
Well, heavily modified. They know what they're doing.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, just for DOT specific things, it definitely like was not quite there yet, just because it hadn't been trained on the latest and greatest. And of course, same thing with like ChatGPT, although I haven't really asked it any like DOTS related things now that, because I think ChatGPT now has like connection to the internet, so it can kind of like look things up. So I wonder how that would do, especially because like, you figure a lot of the reference material that it's looking at, it's going to be referencing, like the online documentation. And it's like, does it really know, the latest version of the documentation is what it should be kind of looking at? Because, all the previous versions are still available online. And if it's just like literally scanning everything, how would it know to differentiate, which one to return from? And also if it's like, looking through forum posts, again, the, forum posts go back like having, many version history. So again, it could be giving outdated data in that sense. So
I think I do think, however, that if you would train like ChatGPT for whatever on like the current web, and you would like ask, I am in this version of dots, I think that it understand the differences all right, but I still think that it's like it probably won't provide you with very much unique like solutions to novel problems still. So I don't know, but yeah, but it's not trained on recent enough data. That's just, yeah.
yeah.
The times I tried to use it for dots, it just completely fails. But that's more because it's just old data. Than I
Right.
don't. I think
Yeah.
it can separate it, but it just doesn't have the latest thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, that's kind of one of the main points. And then yeah, the other thing that you had kind of mentioned is like, it doesn't really kind of give you any like solutions to any novel or interesting problems, because I mean, again, it only kind of goes off of what it had been trained off of. And then like, yeah, maybe sometimes it can like if you're asking for some solution to some problem, it can look at one piece of the problem and another piece of the problem and kind of return those both to you together, and like
Yeah.
sometimes that's helpful.
Yeah.
But most of the times, those aren't like the big problems in game development that you're like the actually the difficult problems that people spend days or even weeks working through these problems.
Yeah.
Um, you know,
Exactly.
yeah, because it's
That's
like,
right point. Right on. Yeah.
yeah, it's like things that people haven't necessarily been done before, or again are very specific to your project. And even if something had like the context of your project, you're trying to do something so different, or that hasn't been like published online very frequently or whatever for it to be trained off of. It's not really going to give you any help with those solutions.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I mean, for some things it has been helpful for me to like, I know there's some really easy like 3D vector math transformation that I can do, but it's like 11:30 at night and I'm just like half asleep and I'm like, I don't want to like think about what this is right now. I know how to do it, but like
Yeah.
my mind can't do this. Let me just go to Chat GPT real quick, say, okay, how do I do this? I can look at the code and say, okay, yeah, that is what I need to do, and I can kind of
Yeah.
bring that
Yeah.
over.
I remember I had like, there got to be a algorithm for fitting the biggest square or rectangle inside of a arbitrary polygon. Like, I have no idea. I don't even really know what to start looking for, how to start searching for it. So I just like explain it to ChatGPT, and also like give me a solution, and also give me some keywords that probably corresponds to whatever white paper there is on this problem. And
Right.
it's
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
like, yeah,
Yeah.
you pointed me in the right direction. So yeah, that's where I use it.
Yeah. 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 That kind of, I think, goes a little bit along the lines of like idea generation, almost, where you say like, okay, like I have this problem, what are some like potential solutions to this problem? Like I remember I was working on this project one time where I had to implement like a type of spring algorithm, and I was like kind of curious about what the different types of spring algorithms there were, and it was like really good for like giving me some of the different types of algorithms and kind of some of the pros and cons and things that you would need to get the algorithms working. But then like most of the algorithms were not like or that they were kind of like published online. They were like pseudo code or maybe like C or C++ code. So then if I asked ChatGPT, say like show me how to do this in C sharp, it would like completely fail at it. But
Yeah.
it was still good enough to like give me the resources for me to kind of like go out and like
Yeah.
find those algorithms available online, and then once I found them, then I could translate them over to a C sharp project.
Yeah, there is surprisingly often when you just need the right keyword, and then the internet's like, oh, here you got the the
Yeah.
smorgasbord of everything you need, like wave collapse, waveform collapse, the generative thing that you can use to, yeah, that's one of those things where like if you don't know that term and you starting to work on generated stuff. So like you're just missing 90% of the work done on the internet. Yeah. Anyway, yeah, agreement.
Yeah, I definitely see there's a lot of people in the chat have thoughts on this, so we can kind of go through some of these things here. So I've seen
Yes.
other chat helpers that supposedly have context from the editor, but so far they honestly haven't been that good. Like they can't even write code in the correct style. Usually, if they're trained on old dots code, then they get stuck in a rut. Yeah, we kind of mentioned
Yeah.
that being trained on the old dots code, but yeah, that is too bad that even if they supposedly have the additional context, that they aren't really that good. Yeah, I think one of the cool things would be like, if you have a very specific style of how you write code, it should be able to, you'd think that it should be able to kind of like replicate that code style.
Yeah.
And yeah. Let's see. I actually use ChatGPT to come up with game ideas because I never have good ideas and it can sometimes push you in a direction that you wouldn't thought of yourself. Yeah, I definitely like that.
Yeah, I agree. I've chatted about the design for just read instructions a ton with ChatGPT, but I feel like there's a part where it's hard to constrain the result in a way that makes the result actually useful. It's like, oh, I have this. I need something more to use with the battery. Like I wanted to do something more with the battery in the game, which in the first map, and it's like, and it just gives me like the biggest, another full project to make, basically. And I'm like, no, it needs to be like just like simple interact, more like skin something that I can do with the battery, like where I can put it into some slot or something for some reason, just to have some variation in it. And it's like, well, you can have this multi-dimensional portal which you can go into and you can find all sorts of surreal things and have a battery placed in there. And I'm like, well, no, maybe
You're
not.
like, that sounds cool, but yeah, I don't want to have to make all of that.
Yeah, so that's my biggest issue. But otherwise, I agree that a lot of brainstorming. Then just like with the AI generated art, it's like brainstorming should like get some air into the ideas and into your brain.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, another person mentions that ChatGPT isn't good at writing dots. So yeah, I wonder if that's
No, yeah,
yeah,
I tried that twice and it just failed miserably.
yeah. JetBrains AI more often than not gives me outdated dot snippets. Again, too bad. And yeah, even if you do it yourself, looking on Google, it'll still find stuff for the old version.
Yeah, that's why you do the tools in the past 2 years or past year.
Yeah, yeah, that's a good point,
I
yeah.
always do that when I search for the dot stuff.
Let's see what else. So yeah, a lot of good AI stuff in here. Hey, just generate me 20 names that sound like fantasy cities. Boom.
Oh yeah,
it's good
yeah,
for
yeah.
that.
Name, yeah. I actually had like a situation where I wanted to make like, oh, there was like a few different props and there was a few different actions you could do with that, and you can like combine all of it into all the permutation. And I just write the whole like framing of what I want to do with all of these permutations, but I need some text, and I'm like, this is the context, this is the props, this is the stuff you want to do with them. Can you just write me all combinations and just some fun stuff around it? And the ChatGPT just blop, and then I was like, oh, I just copy it in.
Yeah, I feel like it's almost like a leveled up version of lorem ipsum. Like it's just like good,
Oh yeah,
like good flavor text that's like better than like having just blah 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 on the screen. It's like something that's actually like pertinent to whatever you're
yeah,
want text to be generated on, but it's still not the 100% most fitting thing.
100%.
Sweet. Well, that was a fun little warm-up topic here. Do want to go into a little bit of an error correction code. So this was one thing that kind of came up from the previous stream that we did.
Yes.
Someone mentioned that. So yeah, I think when we were kind of talking about this portion here about like ordering fields within the different components.
Yeah.
So whoa, and now. Okay, so I think.
I'm ready to be schooled if I'm wrong.
Oh yeah, so I think someone said that it doesn't necessarily make a difference because the Unity's C# compiler and burst compiler should do those optimizations, and that's kind of what I think I had spoken to Danny about. That just C# does that by default. Is like we'll figure out the ordering of the fields, so again you get that correct alignment. I didn't do some like crazy in-depth testing on this on my own, but just with a little Unity project, I did define like an iComponent data and was messing around with changing the ordering of the different fields, and just looking in the component inspector in the entity's specific component inspector window. And it wasn't showing any difference in the size of that
The
data
size.
component. Yeah.
All right. So yeah, maybe burst has something to do with it, because like this was something I heard from Rasmus like 3 years ago. He said like they had like a quiz time at the Stunlock where they went on and like looked at a bunch of structure layouts, and they got very big layouts, and like, oh, which order and what, how much does this take, and then like you had a few, and most people, veteran programmers, were wrong on a lot of them, because it's very, and the explanation that he told me, like, yeah, it's just following the same as C, because it needs to be interoperable by default. That's the explanation I got. But maybe this is old. Maybe it's like maybe changed recently, and that isn't relevant anymore. Or maybe even they were wrong back then, and they didn't do enough testing. Like, and I honestly don't know. I also like shared you an article like half a year ago or
Yeah,
something.
yeah. You shared me an article, and I believe I think Danny shared a talk by, I think his name's Andrew Kelly, the guy who created the Odin programming language.
Right? Yeah.
And kind of one of his main points at the beginning of the video was kind of about the like field ordering and how that like changes the alignment, and thus you can potentially unnecessarily bloat
Yeah.
structs if you kind of have that ordering in an suboptimal manner.
Yeah. So, but you mean like in your, when you look through the archetype or component inspector in Unity, there's no difference in size when you swap around.
Yeah, yeah. It doesn't show any difference in size, but again, that could be maybe incorrect.
There's alignment situation here where like I think you can specify different sizes of alignment,
Well, so
and for
here
the
I'll show you actually what I was seeing, just so we have a little bit of a frame of reference about what Unity actually shows us here. So there. So yeah, you can see I have this like test component here. So you can see it says type size of 24 bytes, size and chunk of 24 bytes. I believe I had a quaternion and 2 integers, and I was doing like integer, quaternion, integer, or like quaternion, integer, and like just changing them around and see if it would change them. But you do also see that there is the component alignment and chunk, which is 16 bytes, which makes sense because that's the size of the quaternion type.
Yeah, I would think that's. Oh, does it change if you have
No,
a small?
no, it doesn't change.
I think that's
the first or.
I think that doesn't have to do anything with the actual. I could be wrong here, but I don't think that has to do anything with the actual content and what's inside. I think that's what sort of the compiler is specified to automatically align. So like if you have something smaller than that, then it generally like it aligns stuff in 16 bytes chunks. And if you're trying to fit something else that doesn't fit into that, it will just like run over or something. I'm not really sure, but I think that one is more of a compiler setting than to do with what's inside of it. Because like if you have high alignment, then you get like more throughput. But if you have lower alignment, then you can squeeze more into the same area, but you don't get enough the similar amount of throughput. It's like a balancing act. It's the same reason why like a boolean is like 8 bits and it's not just 1 bit, because there's you can't deal with like single bits in an efficient manner. So it's easier to just have sometimes it's better to just have it uniformly than to like slice up the space very particular. So just like everybody gets a byte or whatever and it's fine. But yeah. Oh,
So yeah, what I did here is I just removed the quaternion. So there's just two integers. So it has type size of 8 bytes, size and chunk of 8 bytes, and then the component alignment and chunk is also 8 bytes.
didn't you just say that you didn't see any changes in it? So this is the first time you see the changes?
Well, this is because I took out the quaternion.
Yeah, but that's what I asked.
Oh, I was saying
this is
I didn't see
fascinating.
any changes as I was changing.
Oh
the
yeah,
ordering.
because I was like, the alignment thing. Maybe that has to do with compiler instructions and or something. And I asked, what I meant to ask anyway was, does it change if you like remove the quaternion? But then, okay, then all my whole goddamn rant was completely wrong. So how about that? Well, at least we all I learned something, and hopefully their audience. Yeah, that's fascinating.
Okay, so yeah, now I just did int double int, and then now we have 24 byte size and 16 byte alignment. So that, because that should be 16. So I guess if I do double last,
If you do double first, then you're gonna get probably the best packing.
okay,
The biggest one
I just
first.
did double last. So we'll see if that changes it. So double
Oh,
last changes it to 16, 16, 16.
oh, I guess well, yeah, that makes sense. It's probably just an easier way to sort it if you have the biggest first. But I think you will get the same result if you have double first. Yeah.
And double first is 16, 16, 16.
Yeah, so that's exactly so. Yeah, alignment in chunk, that's apparently comes from maybe the biggest sized object into it, and then but it still like gets offset weirdly if you have a bad ordering of it.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know, alignment. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Greatest to smallest. Yeah, makes sense.
I read somewhere that burst had an alignment option. That's probably why I really thought the alignment in chunk was derived from a burst, because I think burst's alignment, minimal alignment, can be modified in compile arguments.
Yeah, and you also can use struct layout to explicitly order the types.
Of course.
And yeah,
but
we've been kind of testing around with that to see if it would do anything, but
yeah, but then also like if you want interoperability with any other language, then you know that then you have to deal with all the mapping yourself.
right. So let me just actually try this real quick here and just see if there's any difference with the sequential layout here. So yeah, this is with sequential layout of int byte int.
I think sequential is default, isn't it? Maybe I'm wrong. I would Google it, but I'm...
Well, yeah, because I know the other... So there's auto, sequential, and explicit. And then with explicit, you have to like manually set the...
field offsets. Yeah. That's very good to use if you have... that could be a quick tip, a cache hit. That's very good when you have some sort of data, and you like there's depending on the type of event or data, whatever you're sending, there could be like either like a float or an int or a uint or whatever, lots of different types, but there's always just one piece of data. Then you can like just place all of them and then have the same, and then have them offset 0 on all of them, so they just take up the same part of the memory, but since you're always just using one of them, they don't conflict. That's a very good use of field offset.
So yeah, I guess there's interesting things to look into there about how you order your fields and everything. But yeah, I think just in general, ordering them greatest to smallest is going to be your best bet.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Good that you went back and looked at it. Yeah, I appreciate that.
So yeah. All right. Anyhow, we can go ahead and do, we're actually going to do a quick little sponsored segment from the Unity Asset Store, because the Unity Asset Store is hosting their spring sale right now. So there are over 300 assets that are available for 50% off. And they're also running flash deals that happen basically every like 12 hours, they'll release a new batch of these flash sales. The flash sales, they basically, the way that it works is they're 70% off their normal price for 12 hours, and then they'll go into 60% off for another 12 hours, and then they'll be at 50% off for basically the remainder of the sale. So I wanted to just call out a couple quick ones that some people here might find interesting. So there, of course, is the Agents Navigation package. This is one that I'm really, really fond of. It works with both fully ECS projects as well as strictly game object-based projects. It is a really interesting asset because if you're using it in a game object context, basically the way that it works is it creates like an entity on the back end for all the different game objects in the scene. So you can still kind of have the game objects on the front end, and then the entities kind of do the processing. Now you're not going to get as good as performance doing that as opposed to a fully ECS implementation, of course. But I do think this is a really good package. I did do a review on it, so if you do want a little bit more information, you can go check out that review on my YouTube channel. Also, there is an expansion of this asset specifically related to doing crowds in Agents Navigation. So you can kind of see it's much better at dealing with larger crowds. They kind of do all their types of different avoidance and everything like that. I am going to be putting up a review of this asset on April 29th. So if you are kind of maybe a little bit on the fence about this, if you want to get this, I mean, it's only $12.50. So it is a pretty good price. However, you do need the base Agents Navigation. This is kind of like an expansion off of that. So you do basically kind of need both. Like the Agents Navigation is kind of like the core package, and this is the expansion of it. So again, if you do want a little bit more information on it, I'm going to be having a review out here in the coming weeks if you want to go ahead and check that out. And then the other kind of dot-specific asset that I did see in the sale was the Rukhanka ECS animation system. So this is a pretty good animation system. I did do a video kind of comparing how to implement the different animation systems a little while back. And yeah, the Rukhanka one, it was pretty easy to use. It integrates with the Mechanim, animation system and controller and everything like that. So it works pretty well. It's easy to set up. And yeah, I've had pretty good experiences with using this one so far. So again, that one is on sale. The sale does go now through May 8th. So you still do have some time to decide if you want. But yeah, I would recommend picking this one up if you're still looking for an ECS-based animation system. Definitely was a good one to use. Then going into kind of some of the other kind of non-ECS related things. So just kind of more general related ones. The Odin Inspector. This one is a classic one. It's I'm sure many people in the chat already have this one, but it is just kind of like a good way for you to create custom inspectors and editors and everything like this. Tobias, have you used the Odin Inspector at all by chance?
No, I have not actually. I've seen it used by a lot of people I worked with, so I like it. I don't know. I built so many editor things myself that it turned out that I haven't really felt like I'm missing it so far.
Yeah, fair enough.
But I've seen it in action, and it's like I see this is value.
Yeah. I definitely like this, and it's got like a lot of easy to use attributes that can just kind of like put things in your inspector for you right away. Also, a couple weeks ago, I did mention that the Odin Inspector now has a tight integration with the JetBrains Rider IDE. So there are some nice kind of code vision things that you can do to make sure you're not making any typos in any of your Odin properties and anything like that. So there are definitely some cool things in there. Another one that Odin also has is the Odin Validator. I don't have as much experience with this one, but basically my understanding of it is you can kind of define different rules for things in your project. And if there are any kind of things breaking those rules, it will alert you to them. So it's definitely really nice, especially if you're using like larger projects, or maybe you're working with multiple people. You have like your designers. You want to make sure that they're putting all the assets in the project in the correct manner. It's definitely a nice thing to do. So feel free to go ahead and check that one out. Another classic Unity Asset Store one is Shapes, which is kind of like a vector graphics library, a way that you can just kind of like easily implement different shapes into your game. Something that I've used this a lot for is like debug rendering as a quick little video. But if you're, you can just do like the basic, debug.drawLine or whatever. But this gives you a lot more like options about, configuring like the thickness, and maybe if you want to have like, dashed lines or curved lines instead. Gives you a lot more kind of flexibility on this. Tobias, is this one that you've used at all?
Yeah, I've used it. I have it. I think it's great. I am a little bit. I don't know how to integrate it very seamlessly into Dots yet. And Freya, the creator of it, she said like, yeah, Dots changes too much. I don't know. Maybe one day.
Right.
So that just annoys me because it's just such a.
Well, so it
nice...
actually is fairly easy to implement in a Dots project. So maybe I'll have to showcase this on a episode
For me,
of the Hot Path show here.
For me, I think you can just put it out through like hybrid or messaging events and stuff there. But the way I would want to use it is that I could maybe draw like 1,000 of these at the same time, because that's what I need to make it usable. Sort of. There's a library called IM Draw,
Right.
Immediate Draw, I think, and there's also the built-in, and both of them are a little bit easier to just get the hang of just a simple line, and you can write almost more with that than with Shapes, because Shapes is much more featureful. So I need the performance more than I need the
I get you. Yeah.
Niceness.
Yeah. So Shapes does have an immediate mode, and that's kind of like basically what I use for Dots projects. You do have to kind of like set up a little system so everything kind of renders properly. But there is, like, if you're doing a game object based project, there are some like components you can use to render different things if you want to. But and the performance has been pretty good in my experience of kind of using a decent amount of the shapes in a project.
Yeah.
And then moving on, there's some other cool things like the Cinti Studios is an asset creator that I'm very fond of. So here's one that they created, the City Zombies pack. I know if people are making any larger scale zombie games where they want to have a bunch of variety in zombies to just completely mow over in your game. This could be a good option for that. And then one of the flash deals that I did want to bring up is the obfuscator. So if you don't want to basically what it does is it's kind of like obfuscates your source code, so you kind of like changes up the variable names and everything, so it's like a little bit more difficult for people to kind of like go into your source code and kind of inspect it. Of course it's not completely foolproof, but it could be at least kind of a deterrence for people kind of digging into your source code if you don't want that. So
yeah, we had to we obfuscated battle right a lot on the client side for esports cheating problems.
That totally makes sense. You don't want people going in like changing variables and everything.
Yeah, there are a lot of obfuscation tools that had nothing to do with the Unity that's still C# compatible. But I would recommend if there's anything integrated into Unity, because making that sort of play well with how the signatures of the different functions interact with in and out of Unity. Sometimes it's a little bit of a minefield. So yeah, I would recommend you just grabbing something from the Unity asset source and make sure it works with Unity.
Yeah, yeah. And yeah, again, it
Otherwise,
is on.
it's a very common thing to deal with in all sorts of language. So there's a lot of obfuscation tool outside of Unity.
Right. Yeah. So yeah, if you do want a Unity specific one, again, it is on sale right now. It is on flash deal, so it's only $24 for the next 18 hours. And I do want to check out. Phony says this A-line. I don't know if I've heard it. Oh, okay. Something similar to kind of like a shapes, where you can kind of, I guess, draw different things in here. Oh, and it is fully burst and ECS compatible. Ooh,
Really?
I like this a lot.
I gotta maybe that's the thing. I that's the third vector graphic library I'm gonna buy if I.
Yeah,
Damn.
man, I definitely
But,
want to check this one out. Cool. Well, thanks for letting us know. This is sweet.
Yes. All right.
All right. So yeah, once again, go ahead and check out the spring sale over on the Unity Asset Store. I have links to basically all the assets that we talked about down in the description below. So if you did find any of those interesting, go ahead and click on those. And those are affiliate links. So if you do end up clicking on any of those and you purchase anything within the next couple of days or something like that, I do receive a small percentage of that sale. So, it goes to, doesn't cost you anything extra, and it goes to help us here over at TurboMix Games. So yeah, thank you very much for that. Okay, so anyways, moving on here, we can go into our cash hit, which is our Unity Dots quick tip of the week. Tobias, you're taking over our quick tip of the week for this week. So what do you got for us?
Yeah. So this is a quick one. Two very small quick one. I'm just showing some random things here. I'm gonna take the precision clear.
Zoom in just a couple clicks there, please.
Yeah, there isn't. I barely need to show code here. This is code from my new thing that I'm just like experimenting with a little bit between promoting my game. Maybe we talked about this. I don't know, but in Just Read Instructions, I have a ton of these sort of things where I have some sort of a buffer, or in this case, a hash map. And I accumulate some incoming data with it. You can see I'm like putting in like increasing lists that is sorted of some sorts. And in Just Read Instructions, I would make this list here with a temp job allocation, and then I would use that because I didn't realize that it's not fastest necessarily, but it's more reasonable for the memory anyway to just allocate a persistent one and then clear it every time you use it. So, and there's so many times that you don't need to use temp or temp job, because you can just have a persistent one, and that's parallelizable and burstable and all of that with persistent. So I just, since I realized that just like a year ago or something, or maybe half a year ago, I think we actually talked about it with Danny, and he pointed out that you just use persistent everywhere. I feel like I should just point that out once again. Use persistent, just clear it and reuse the same memory over and over and over again.
Yeah, exactly. Just block off the data once, and then you have that section of data already allocated for you, and then you can just clear it out, wipe it out, and reuse it, so you're not having to constantly create new create and delete new places of memory. So yeah.
And also, like, this has the unsafe hash map and the native hash map also that is safe have initial capacity, so it's not capacity, so it will auto grow. It will grow as you put in more than you have capacity for, if I'm not mistaken. That's what the behavior I've had so far. There's some of the native collections that is capacity and not initial capacity, and then you need to be aware of how much they're and need to grow them if you run out of space and stuff. So that's one. And then another just small thing, which this is something where I looked at a lot of source code, and I just noticed that people are using doing everything public all the time. And in assembly C#, this is the end assembly that just collects all other assemblies. So there's no assembly that that depends on assembly C# in Unity. So it doesn't really matter, but it's just a good habit. If you have another assembly, so you have assembly definitions and you have a lot of other stuff in packaged away in good, nice, structured assembly trees, so sort of, you should just make sure to just always have everything as private. This is by default private, right? I just have a habit of not writing out private. Always private.
Private.
What's going on? There we go. Oh, anyway, it doesn't matter. Have it private by default, and just when you actually need it to be public, then you put the public. Because what's happening is, if you have a somewhere like I have this here, which it's in Foundation ASM, if there's a public class struct or whatever inside of this, and there's a lot of other assemblies depending on Foundation, or so compiling takes slightly longer for no good reason, because it needs to traverse all the public available types. And if it's a function type or whatever, and it's private instead, it's just the whole compiling process and linking assemblies together is doesn't need to care about them at all. So in a big game, this makes a slight difference, and the seconds every day you compile stack up during a year of development. So just I don't have any good way of showing this right now. Let's see here. So like if you have some component like struct like this, and you have something public int f right here, and you want it to be accessible through the inspector. This doesn't work, right? Because it's less accessible, but you want it to be serialized. Then you have the Unity engine.serializable field, and that does the same thing, but it keeps it still private. So now you have this value accessible in the inspector, like you need the system serializable. So, but that's not really the point. So yeah, just keep everything private until you need it to be public. Even like all my systems, I systems are partial structs, so they are not public. There's no reason for them to be public unless you actually use them in another assembly. That's the actual reason to have them public, if they're going to be exposed outside of the assembly. So yeah,
Makes
something
sense.
to think about.
Yeah, no, I mean, I typically default for ECS things to have most things as public. So
yeah, I mean, it's not a huge difference like most things, but there's if you just get the habit, when you find out, oh, god damn it, that's private, I need to make it public. Well, if it's your source code, that's a trivial problem to just add public and then be done with it. But if you just keep everything private, you just know that there's no unnecessary cross contamination between in the compile time between assemblies.
Awesome. Well, sounds good to me. So yeah, we can go ahead and move on to our next thing, the context switch here. So yeah, for this one, I kind of wanted to, again, pick your brain a little bit about just kind of your maybe high-level postmortem thoughts on your game. Just read the instructions, because you did just launch it into early access. So just kind of wanted to chat with you a little bit about, again, high-level thoughts on how you feel like development went overall, if there's any kind of major things that you might want to do differently, just kind of, how the launch went and what you're looking forward to, continuing out the development of this game in early access now.
Yeah, so yeah, this stemmed from a tweet. Maybe I can post that actually in the...
Oh, yeah.
I'll just use this thing here. So I tweeted because I had there's so much things about that I feel differently about game development after just read instructions, and part of it was how much stuff did I actually make, and how much am I using out of that? Did I spend months on stuff that is just irrelevant in the end, and can I minimize that, or is it just part of development? So this thread was me like going through that, and that sort of sparked this idea of talking a little bit about it, I guess. But yeah, it feels so good to be able to know exactly, well, not exactly, but have a very good grasp on what it means, like in total, to release a game in early access. Not really exactly the same as a full release, but very close. Because I didn't have that big of a detailed understanding of the whole process when I worked at Stunlock. And it's so fascinating to think about the dead ends that you've been into, design wise and tech wise, that in the moment there's just an exploration of something, and then you back out of it, but it's not really like, oh, take a decision to like, we stop this feature and we continue with something else. It just often just morphs into somewhere where you're like, just well, that doesn't really work like it should, then we need to do this instead, and then you sort of just forget about an old feature, and the code just rots because you don't do anything with it, and then you just remembered, oh, I implemented that stuff like 2 years ago. And remembering that and going through that, it's like you get rose tinted glasses. You're like, oh right, there's a lot of stuff that I did where that was unnecessary. I want to minimize that, and I didn't realize that until I start to think about everything very hard. So this game, if I knew exactly what I was gonna make, I could have made this in half the time, fair and square, half the time.
But
There's
yeah,
like,
so much of the battle is figuring things out. You have some idea in your head. You gotta go through the process of trying that out, seeing if it is actually fun or a worthwhile
yeah,
pursuit. Of
exactly.
course, if you had all the answers of the final version of the game, then of course it would take a lot less time. But yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, it's obvious. Of course, it would take a lot less time, but it's still like, it's fascinating to like actually like put like magnitudes on it, sort of like how much, what's the actual difference. And it's just more than I expected. If you would ask me a few years ago, I would be like, yeah, well, I'm doing all sorts of things, and we're gonna put everything together, and it's gonna be a good, nice, happy party with all the features. But no, that's not the case. There's a lot of stuff that you just throw out because it's just a bad idea or badly implemented. Yeah.
But yeah, I
Uh,
mean, you do got to go through that process to, figure out that something is bad, right?
yeah. But I think, yeah, the part about just like consciously realizing that you threw away the bad idea in the end, and how much time you spent on it, consciously just thinking about it a little bit is very helpful, because sometimes it's easy to just like forget you even did it, and then you just like, why did I spend 4 years on a game? How did that happen? And like, oh right, I did all this stuff that didn't really make it in the end. So
Right.
that's an insight, how you don't have a good memory of how it turned out. um yeah, I see two things that I should comment on here. First of all, we can take the thing here. What's going on here? Did you use ECS because your game demanded it, or did you make games so you could use ECS? I wanted to do ECS. I was mostly very interested in Burst, because Burst just blew my mind when I tried it first time. And then we were basically like, uh, oh, we can have a ton of enemies. I wonder what type of game you can make with a ton of enemies. That's so I think yes to both of those. My game demanded it, but it was because I wanted to use ECS. It was like, let's make something that can only be made in ECS.
Do you
Uh,
have any regrets of using Unity ECS, or are you glad that you went down the path of using that, especially when you did? Because again, you've been developing this game for, you said, what, 4 or 5 years?
yeah, not
And
constant, not
But
100%,
yeah,
but yeah,
ECS was in a completely different state than it is now.
yeah.
So yeah, do you have any kind of thoughts on just kind of your choice to use ECS? Were you glad you did it? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm glad I did it. Yeah, 100%. I'm not going back to anything else. And now when I'm starting the new, just tinkering with a few other ideas, I'm like, yeah, this is. I have so much better grasp of how to deal with how to do things fast in ECS now. So it's just as fast as game object development for me nowadays. But
Nice.
but one thing I do, and this is hard to say, it's a regret, and it's like I would have hoped I came up with the whole idea of my own company and my own game like 1 year later, because that would have meant that I didn't have to deal with 0.17 and 0.50 and 51 as much. Like 17 would basically be a gone deal by then. And then I
Right.
could go straight into baking and just be like, you need to bake. There's no live conversion. And it's not like I think it was a good idea to just remove live conversion, but it was just I would have been more mature the API and more of a like guardrails that makes it slightly easier to deal with. Yeah. So that's basically the answer to that. So yes, but maybe start a little later. Yeah.
Well, I mean,
Uh,
it wasn't really even till I guess it's only been really like a year and a half since like the experimental 1.0 has been out, and that's where they like fully embraced authoring and subscenes and kind of removed the live conversion and everything like that.
yeah,
So
but remember when I started, there was no entities dot for each. There was only jobs.
oh yeah, like
Yeah,
gives you
yeah, I
the
wrote everything into a job from the very beginning. There was no code generation, period.
yeah.
Yeah, so that's the difference. That took a lot of time to work with that.
That's fair. Yeah.
Entity command buffers couldn't be executed in burst in either way. You couldn't write to them or play them in burst. You couldn't write to a command buffer in burst.
Wow.
Yeah, obviously that was Unity. Of course we're gonna burst this stuff, but not right now. We have bigger
Yeah.
fish to fry. So
Yeah.
yeah. But I just wanted to just point out one thing here with the other one. Oh, the light GPU baker sounds interesting. If we could bake some of the stuff we generate at runtime, we can double our frame rate. Well, it's I think shadows is probably what maybe more relevant in this case, because shadows is what could save if you bake them, you could save some performance on not having to generate them as often or each frame. But in this case, it was indirect lighting, so I can just show the result of. So we can see here. So here we have no light bake, and here we have with light bake. So maybe I can do like that, and we can have both. So that's a difference. It looks better here. It's like you got the warmness of the color of the street
Yeah.
lights, and you
Get a
uh,
little more proper lighting on the building, it looks like.
yeah, you get the dark side here because there's no light hitting that directly.
By the way, how are you rendering the interiors of those rooms there?
Oh wow, yes, yes. That's the fake interior shader. Yes. And also here is almost a little bit better. The valley here is or the is it called valley? No. Yeah,
The
whatever.
alley.
Alley, yeah, that's the word. You can see
Yeah.
here you see all the way in, and this house here is just completely normally lit, more or less, and here is just going into darkness. So this thing runs for 400 meters times 400 meters big city like this that generates on the fly when you start the game, and then it takes about 30 seconds to light bake it. So that's the light baker. Is it worth spending 3 months making this on the GPU and then 30 seconds every time you load a game to have this slight lighting change? I don't know. I don't think so, but it was very fun to make.
Yeah, I mean, it's at least a good exercise that kind of gives you like more insight into kind of like the rendering process. And if you like, ever need to kind of
Yeah,
hook into that more, then, you
yeah,
kind
it
of
was.
have,
I mean,
it's
it's
like, good for
crazy.
your own personal knowledge, right?
Yeah, it was. I mean, I'm very proud that I managed to go through that and come out the other end with the working system. It's super complex, like the all the refraction formulas and shit that I had to go through and learn to be able to deal with that. It's just by far the most complex project I ever done in my life, like that in a single feature. Yeah, Chris. Yeah, I no, it's runtime because I have procedural generated maps every time you press play. So you never get the same map twice in a row with just read instructions. And then you like, there's how do you light bake that? Well, you do it after you're done with it, the generation, but then it needs to go very fast. And like Unity's light baker is way more accurate and more better result than mine, because I do so many assumptions and shortcuts, but that's why it just takes 30 seconds on a normal GPU. Yeah.
And you are
So
using HDRP, right?
yeah. But I hook into the whole normal light map system in the HRP. So I overwrite Unity's own light map sort of slots in the renderer. I fetch it out like exactly where it's supposed to be, and I generate all the lights and maps, and then I fill them in, and here you have it, render as it was a statically baked light map. And yeah.
And then how do you write your shaders? Do you use shader graph or code?
My shaders, everyone except for one is shader graph. Well, all of them is technically shader graph. One of them is more or less shader graph just to get everything going, and then it goes into a custom node where everything is written by hand. That's a better idea than writing it squarely, because the setup code and everything is kind of a complex thing in HDRP, because you get so many G buffer textures to deal with. So it's better to just have the to just use a shady graph, and then the first thing you do is just go into your own custom node code. So you write your own custom code into that, but it's run through a shader graph. And then the light baker is just HLSL. Is that the name? HLSL,
Yeah.
like the CUDA thing, just written by hand completely.
Sweet. So yeah, any other kind of post-mortem thoughts on your game?
Um, I would say that the hardest, there's two really hard parts that I want to push on to people who want to make their own game.
Mm-hmm.
That's just sneakily hard. Is one is like um, feature creep is such an obvious thing that everybody deals with, but it's way more sneakier than you think, because it's the oh, I really do think I need this to make the game better. To deal with that sort of value proposition, is X amount of weeks worth it for this feature, because I really think that the game will be better because of it. Like, if you truly feel it, how do you say no to it? And if you think you can squeeze it in, like, it's not about, oh, this looks nice, let's put it on the wish list. Oh, one day I will just start pulling stuff off the wish list and it will be all right. And maybe people do that, but the wish list often gets sort of forgotten, and the problem you have is that you are not happy with your game within the time budget you have, and you realize there's a feature that might be fixing it, and it could really be the case, but you don't know, and it's a feature creep, and you're gonna have to delay it. And it's yeah, that's it's just very hard to deal with that decision, because you're like, if you implement this as quickly as possible, then you get tick that debt, and if you don't do that, then it takes just a long time. So that's a I don't know how to deal with that, honestly. It's
Yeah, I was
just
gonna say, do you have any good strategies that you've used in the past to kind of maybe like not make split-second decisions in the moment, or maybe kind of like detach from the work a little bit to give yourself some good time to think about if this feature is really worth it, and how do you kind of determine how long a feature might take, and what that would benefit to the project or take away from development time on other features.
yeah, I think the time taken, like burn rate of the, or not burn, but how long time you're gonna spend on it, that's just experience. Nobody can give you a good algorithm for figuring out how long you're gonna take to make something. It's just impossible to exactly predict. But the thing you said, like putting it aside and having it on the back burner, that's a very good, let your brain marinate on the idea a little bit. That's a pretty good thing. You should context switch, context switch between different, so you can get back to it and come in from a slightly different angle, maybe like 5 days, 2 weeks later. But otherwise, I would just say, like, is there a version of this that you can like just throw together in the ugliest form to just see, is this a good idea at all? But sometimes that's just not possible. Like, it's a feature that needs to be tightly integrated to work well. So it's very hard to know.
Maybe
Yeah.
when
So
uh, maybe when AI tools evolve to the point where we can kind of prototype some things out with them, we could maybe just do a little prompt to test out some ideas.
yeah. And then this almost a little bit to the next the same point, but uh, how when to generalize code. That's also that is
Hmm.
just very tricky, and I don't think there's a good solution, but I think that everybody will do better if they just like uh, is very stern with themselves, like, no, I shall not generalize this code. There's no reason for it. I know I have a good idea in my brain how it can look, and it will look all clean and sexy and nice if I implement it like this, but it will take a lot longer time, and it's not needed to make the game feature work, to make it work properly. Like, it's just a nice generalization. Just don't do it. Just make the game and then see. It's like people overgeneralize. Well, programmers slash engineers overgeneralize. Designers have the opposite problems often. They just like throw something together, and then they just sit on a mountain of duct taped stuff together, and like, oh, my game, it doesn't work. Why?
Then you gotta, yeah,
So
go through that whole nasty web of generalization and figure out, okay, I'm setting this type here like this, and it's expecting this, and
yeah, and then we can just quickly tie it together and then be done with it. But this comment here: did you do play test along the way to validate some features? Yeah, I did. But the problem is that a lot of times, if the scope is big enough, like with this game, there's like, oh, you show it to somebody and they start having some feedback, and you like 70% of what they say. It's just, you're like, yeah, I know, we're gonna fix it one day.
yeah, yeah,
And you're like, well, the 30% you get out of it, that's a good thing, and you should play test. And I did play test a lot, and got some feedback. But it's so hard when your game is kind of a big concept, and it's like, I think most of the components needs to be sort of working to evaluate it properly. Then this becomes, so I think a bigger moral of the story here is make smaller projects so you can actually make it all the way through and then test it without having to invest a year of your life. Yeah.
yeah. No, I mean that's a good point. Like, you as the developer, you're spending every day with your game. Like, a lot of the things that need improvement already, and when you go to playtest, then people recognize them. But like you say, there is kind of that other 30% of things that maybe might not be as obvious to you, or maybe things that you might have recognized, but you didn't maybe understand how important that they were to a specific type of player.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So yeah,
And the target audience and everything, it just becomes a mess of complicated
yeah,
relationships. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Also, on the generalization, never try to future proof code. It's a myth. You can't do it. Don't future proof. Just write what you need today. Don't. I don't know if you can relate to that, but I never ever used any code that I've future proofed in the way I thought. That
Right.
just
Yeah,
write it
yeah.
again. It's much
And
better.
then yeah, I feel like 80% of the time at least, I go up and end up having to completely re-implement that anyways. So like that,
Yeah. Don't do
yeah.
it. Yeah, it's a myth. Yeah, so that's
Um,
yeah.
well, on
Continue.
the topic of scope, I guess your project, of course, it kind of is what it is. But if you would have done something differently, or maybe even for your next project, how would you kind of manage the scope of that? Would you want it to do a smaller project, or do you kind of have any thoughts related to scope now that your current project is out there?
No multiplayer unless I'm more than 3 people or something. And that's very obvious. Should have been obvious 5 years ago. Well, when my partner left the company, I should have like, no multiplayer. I'm all alone. I'm gonna make a single player. But I had a hubris, I guess. Um, But yeah, smaller scope and focus on the details and quality more. I just ran through so many features that I thought was so interesting to implement, and I thought they would add to the experience. And like, nah, it's I should have spent a lot more time on the details and the quality of stuff, and make it, and also not get stuck in something that I felt was, because it was very hard to design what Just Read Instruction became. It's just very tricky game to design for a lot of reasons, and I think I did the best I could, and I'm proud of the balancing work and the everything, because there's a lot of tricky things with 1,000 enemies. But pick a slightly easier design space to work in. That would be my, yeah. That's a big scope change actually.
So really just kind of focusing on quality over quantity. So maybe, just like, yeah, taking more time to get things right,
Yeah.
looking correctly, looking nice, rather than adding more features and more options and everything, right?
Yeah. But it's the I had a ton of fun making
I'm sure. I'm sure.
the light baker, like and that's just not a relative, not a thing that is relevant in the end. So I don't know. Do I regret it? Maybe not. It was still super fun to make.
Right, because
So
you say, on your little Twitter thread here, you kind of ranked things by usefulness, difficulty, and fun. And you'll see that you only do rank the light baker as a 3 out of 10 usefulness, but the difficulty and fun to implement were both 9 out of 10s. So yeah, that's
yes,
cool.
yes. So I by the correlation there is, the more difficult it was, the more fun it was. But there was zero correlation with the usefulness of it.
Yeah, yeah, no. I mean, it is very cool when there's something like really difficult and challenging, that yeah, it does end up being a ton of fun because you learn so much and really challenge yourself, and yeah.
Yeah, exactly. All right. There's somebody asking how I handled playtesting and feedback. Yeah, I had a Discord. I have a Discord thing, and we tried to do some playtest and stuff. But the honest truth, it's less playtested than it should have been, because I just did program so many features in. I didn't have time to playtest it enough. It still works and it's fun to play, but it's like the quality and the refineness could have been stepped a bit for sure.
Right, yeah. All right, well, any other last thoughts before we move on here?
No, I think that's good for now.
All right. Actually, real quick on just the launch, you don't have to get into like too much details on it, but I guess how do you kind of feel about actually launching the project, and now that it's out there, is there anything that you think you might wanted to have done differently, kind of leading up to the actual release of your game?
Well, yeah, maybe cut some parts of it earlier and not implement them, and go straight for like having it actually like completely more or less done a month before. But that's just wish list thing that everybody will say for every project. Like, oh, I wish I'd written the essay not this night. That's sort of the same feeling. Like, yeah, it's just you're a time optimist, and then just that's the problem. But otherwise, no, I don't think so. I'm pretty happy that I got 22 different achievements. That I wrote the code for all my achievements in a week during my ski trip.
Nice.
That's I'm pretty happy about. And
Nice.
yeah, so if you want some achievements to your Steam account, 22 of them is in my game, and only 2 of them is really hard. The other 20 is kind of straightforward if you just read the instructions.
Nice. Yes, I'm glad you did that. Can you get all the achievements single player, or some of them require
Yeah.
multiplayer?
Oh no, you actually. Yes, I think you need. Yes, you need multiplayer for a few of them. Yeah, most of them is single player, but a few of them, I think you need to revive somebody from limbo, and and then I think you need to like help. Yeah, I don't remember exactly, but I think 2 of them is multiplayer specific.
Sweet.
That didn't cross my mind actually when I wrote them. I was just like fun things to
No,
do in
I
the
mean, that's
game.
just, yeah, curious.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Cool. Well, yeah, I'm very much looking forward to diving into some Just Read the Instructions. And if you are too, go ahead and check it out. They have the Steam link down in the description of this video. Again, it is available right now. So yeah, check it out.
Yeah.
Okay, so with that, we can go ahead and move on to kind of our main section of the show, our instruction set, where I'm going to be showcasing a project that I had created a little while back that I had made a video on. The video is called like I made Flappy Bird with 10,000 birds or something like that. So yeah, anyways, I kind of wanted to just showcase this project a little bit because I didn't go into the code all too much in that video. So I did just kind of end up like extracting some of the main things out into kind of more of a dedicated sample project that people can reference. Just because I wanted like a nice, simple implementation of a Boids setup that people could kind of reference and build off of. So real quick, I'll just kind of show it off what it's going on here. So basically we have kind of this like main leader bird down here in the middle, and then this leader bird can kind of run around, and basically you'll see that kind of the flock of birds kind of follow that. Although they're kind of in a little bit of a weird pattern right now, so I'm not sure what's up with that. And it takes a little bit of kind of dialing in on some of these settings to get the flocking behaviors to actually work correctly here. But yeah, that's just kind of like the basic implementation that I did. There's only like 500 birds or so in this little sample project, but the kind of the one that I did in the video, there's 10,000 of them, so it is actually quite efficient even at that 10,000 scale. So it works pretty well. Before I get into my implementation, I do just want to call out that Unity does have a Boids sample project available as part of their ECS samples repository. So that can kind of be a good thing to look into. I believe there is a video online of Mike Acton kind of actually talking about some of the different things that he did in that application to get the Boids working. I will warn you, it's not necessarily the most like kind of straightforward project. There's a lot of kind of things that are a little bit confusing and not always completely obvious, and there's some ridiculously named job types. For example, this one that I copied here, it's the iJob native parallel multi-hash map merged shared key indices.
That's yeah. Well, I don't know what it means, but it means something specific.
And I think Mike Acton was a little bit self-aware of that one, and I'm pretty sure in the video he mentions either that type or another type, and was like, "Yeah,
I have a memory
it's
of
the best
watching...
the best name I could come up with."
Yeah, I have a memory of watching this and chuckling a little bit.
Yeah. And so yeah, kind of going into Boids, while they look cool, are there actually any real gameplay uses for this kinds of stuff? So I'd go ahead and check out the video that I did on the Flappy Boids is what I call it, to kind of check out what I did with that. Again, that video is kind of mostly focused on kind of like the design aspects of how could I actually create a version of Flappy Birds with 10,000 birds that was actually kind of interesting. And then so basically, the way that it works is like, it's kind of Flappy Bird like normal, where you have kind of like the pipes that you go through and everything. And then basically every time one of those birds, crosses one of those pipes, then you get one added to your score. So you end up like, racking up like, thousands and thousands and thousands of points very quickly, just because there's so many kind of birds. And then again, same Flappy Bird rules apply where, if a bird hits a pipe, then they get destroyed. And then basically over time, the pipes kind of like get kind of like narrow and narrower, as your flock of birds kind of, dwindles down. So the game becomes a little bit more challenging as you go on. So anyways, I kind of wanted to, again, showcase a little bit about kind of what's going on here. So I can just kind of pull up. Basically the way that this works is, with Boids, what's kind of happening is each of these, birds needs to kind of reference the birds in a surrounding area to them to basically figure out, what they're doing. in a kind of more complete Boids implementation, you kind of like, reference their velocity, the direction that they're moving in, and kind of, their positions. So you can basically kind of have some separation between yourself and the, neighboring ones. So of course you don't want any, geometry and anything kind of overlapping. There is a little bit of overlapping happening in this, but I think it's, fine for this little 2D project. It kind of gets the point across. And then, yeah, so you kind of want the separation, like the cohesion is so they all kind of like move in like kind of like a similar direction. So they look like they're kind of like, flocking. So again, you kind of need to reference some of the, properties of the velocity, the direction that they're facing and everything like that. So with this one, this is kind of a little bit more of a simple implementation where the birds kind of all have like a target point. They're trying to basically get to this target bird, which is in the center of the screen, which you as the player kind of control around. And then they're also kind of doing that separation logic. So they're separating away from the birds that are nearby to them. So one of the problems that you find out right away is that, it's not necessarily a problem when you have like, maybe a few hundred birds or anything less than that. Because basically what you're going to end up having to do is, you as one single bird, you're going to have to basically check the position of all the other birds in the flock to see, kind of where they are. And, the close ones, you want to kind of add a little bit of a force to kind of move them away from the closer ones. And again, if you have kind of like a big clump of them, you kind of want to have those all kind of spread out. And so, yeah, really the only way that you can kind of, reference these other birds is by basically iterating through each of them, looking at their position, comparing it with your own position. So that's kind of one of the problems is it's called like the n squared problem where, every single bird has to reference every other bird. So if you have, 500 birds, well, you're having to do 500 times 500 comparisons, which ends up being costly, again, if you're having larger and larger numbers of birds. So one thing that you kind of end up needing to do is implement some type of spatial querying. So what I've chosen to do, because this is a 2D project, and again, because it's fairly simple to do, I've implemented a structure known as a quad tree. Now I can give you a little bit of a visual of what a quad tree looks like here. So if we open this up, and you can see actually in the scene view, hopefully this is showing up good here. But basically this is kind of the quad tree setup here. So I'll just go ahead and pause this and just kind of show you, what this looks like at kind of the largest scale here. So basically we have this kind of one giant area that we defined here, which is just kind of like where our kind of like birds will slot into. And you see as we kind of get narrower and narrower, to the point where there's like more kind of like dense levels of birds, this quad tree kind of breaks up into smaller and smaller sections. So I believe I have it so I think like a specific kind of like leaf of the quad tree can have up to 4 birds in it before it needs to get subdivided. So for example, we have this kind of large section right here. And then when we say like inserted 4 birds into it, now we're at capacity, but we still want to add more. So what we need to do is we need to subdivide it. So basically this kind of quadrant up here kind of now breaks into these kind of 4 main sections right here. Now you see that say over in here, well, we can fit, all these birds in here based off of the capacity that I have. So we don't need to subdivide this any further. However, if we kind of go over here, you'll see that, as there are kind of more dense birds, now we have to start getting like, really granular with these quad trees, to the point where we're able to kind of fit those all without subdividing any further. And you see as you get, really close to the center, there's even another kind of subdivision happening here. So this is kind of the idea. Now the thing with these quad trees is we basically have to regenerate this quad tree every single frame. So you can actually see if I come back and like kind of move this bird around, you see that now the subdivision happens a little bit differently now that like, we're having to regenerate it kind of up more in this corner now. So again, this is kind of where all these subdivisions are happening. So this is, kind of the basic idea of a quad tree. Of course, you can do something like this in 3D, which is known as an octree, where basically you're kind of you're basically kind of doing like different volumes rather than squares. So yeah, kind of wanted to just showcase this simple little quad tree implementation. Again, all this code is up available on GitHub, and I should have the link down in the description of this. It's just kind of in our Hot Path Show repo on episode 13 there. So yeah, looking into the quad tree thing here, a couple things that I do want to point out is we are using some pointers for some things. So you do have to, in your project settings, enable unsafe code. So there is a checkbox in the player settings for allow unsafe code. So you do have to enable that checkbox there. So yeah, basically, so this is kind of the quad tree helper. We can go into this in a sec, but here's the actual structure of the quad tree. So we basically define the center point as well as the extents. And basically from that, we can kind of determine if a point lies within or outside of that quad tree. Here's where we also kind of define the capacity of, how many elements we can fit in the quad tree. Again, we kind of want to, I think I, again, have this set to a value of 4, but you can kind of fine tune that depending on your project. Where, in some cases, maybe you want to have a larger or a smaller value, but 4 is usually a pretty good number to kind of start with for something like this. We have a fixed list, 64 bytes for float 2. The reason that I did this, I think, is because if you do the math here, that should come out to 4 float 2s. Does that sound right? Of different positions. So yeah, basically this allows us to actually create a struct where we can store all that data inside the actual struct there.
Yeah, otherwise you will need more unsafe stuff.
Right. Yeah. So yeah. Basically, again, we kind of define that number of bytes that we have blocked off, and we can say have all these positions that we're adding in to that there.
Yeah, how many or four entities or four element inside of it? Yeah, that should be fit. The slight awkwardness
8 times 4, so I mean it's 32. I guess I could use 32 bytes, right?
Yeah, no, you can't actually, because they have a slight few bits allocated for the size of the list.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I was just thinking about that.
Right.
Is it? Are you getting? But yeah, it's awkward. It's like they use 1 byte for the enumeration of it or the length.
Yeah. That's correct.
So it becomes an annoying amount of element you can have in not an easy by 2 amount.
Yeah.
Right.
And then we have a Boolean for is divided. Yeah. Now here's where we kind of use our pointer. So this is a pointer to another quad tree type for the subdivision pointer. So can't remember if this is like the parent or one of the childs, but we'll get to that as we kind of go in. Again, I wrote this code a little while ago. And then I basically kind of have just kind of some private little properties here for the minimum x value, which is just kind of like, calculating this based off of the center, and then you subtract the extents in the x direction. Same thing for all the min and max x and y there. Of course, we have our constructor here where we just kind of set the defaults. And then now, here's where, let me see if there's anything that I should go into before this. Yeah. So, basically what we do is once we have kind of created our quad tree, we want to start implementing some entities into it. So I don't actually implement an entity. Rather, I'm actually just inserting an entity. I'm inserting a position, just a float 2 position. So basically what happens is we check to see if it already contains the point. I'm guessing, there was kind of some maybe like duplication that I was seeing. If we contain the point, then we don't need to, add that point again. What happens here is if the entity count is less than the capacity, all we do is we just go ahead and add that position to our positions list and increase that entity count. and then just return true from here that it did successfully insert that entity. However, if we are above capacity, then what we're going to do is do this subdivide method where it actually kind of takes that one big quad tree and we divide it into the 4 new quad trees here. So we can go ahead and just look into this subdivide here. So you see that we basically just take the current extents and then we just divide that by 2, so we get our half extents. And then what we can do is I have this quad tree helper, which we might look at in a little bit of a sec here. And we can go ahead and say, you'll see that I'm setting 4 new leaves. So basically, we're kind of defining the new center and new extents here by taking, again, our center, we're adding in the half extents in the X and Y direction. So now we get kind of the center of one of the quadrants, and then now we have the half extents. We can define the half extents, and we're basically just using the same capacity. So again, it's going to be 4 elements in that quad tree there. Okay, so I think, okay. So I know what's happening. So yeah, the subdivision pointer is basically the pointer to the first leaf. And then I think the way that I have it set up is we can just kind of like add the memory values, or like the from the pointer we can just like add increment the pointer value or whatever to get like the next leaves in the quad tree there. So yeah, then we just basically create all the quad trees and set is divided equal to true. So after our subdivision, then we get our pointer from that subdivision pointer here. And then, you see that I'm just kind of incrementing this by 4 bytes because, I guess those just kind of all end up in the, next to each other in memory. However, I have that set up. And then, then we can actually go ahead and insert the entity on the, correct subdivision here. So, just a little bit of kind of interesting memory math and things that we need to do here. So let's see if there's anything interesting in this quad tree helper that there's just again a little bit of kind of pointer stuff going on here, but I mean you can kind of read through this if you want, but again the idea is we try and insert some things in there. If we're already at capacity, then we need to subdivide, and then we can now insert things into the kind of child nodes. And I have this little debug helper function so that we can kind of draw that whole tree structure on the screen there. So again, that's kind of the basics of implementing the quad tree. So again, this is just kind of like inserting things into the quad tree. So this is just kind of creating that quad tree. This doesn't really give us the benefits of the quad tree until we actually start keying into the quad tree. So we can look at the Boid move system here. So you can see that, this is actually here where the first thing that we're doing is we're just inserting the entities into the quad tree. Again, we have to do this for every single entity, every single frame. We do need to rebuild this every frame. So that is kind of one of the potential overheads to keep into consideration, is that you do need to continue creating this structure every frame because, of course, as the Boids are moving around, you're going to need to be basically rebuilding these things here. So the Flappy Boids job is kind of where all the magic is happening here. So you see that what we're doing is we're going to be writing to kind of our Boid acceleration. So the idea here is, again, we're going to first be looking at our target because we want our Boid to kind of move towards that target and always follow that target. But again, also needs to reference kind of the nearby Boids to basically move kind of away from them. So essentially what's happening here is, the first part of that is pretty easy. We can, we'll just pass in the target position, which is the, XY position of that target bird. And then we can do, a pretty easy, just kind of distance comparison to make sure that, we're, actually away from that bird. And then just kind of get the direction to that target. What I end up doing is I normalize that out to just get the direction and then multiply this by a target weight that I've set. The reason that I do this is because I want to maybe kind of set a priority difference between, how strongly of a force should the bird individual Boid move towards the target bird versus how significant of a strength it should move away from other birds. So I believe for this example, I have it set to be a little bit stronger of a separation force rather than the target force. So it's still kind of generally moving towards the target, but it's saying that it's more important to be separated from the other birds in the surrounding area. So then the second part of this is kind of the steering. And so this is where we, again, just use our quad tree here and we can do a get nearby positions. So you see that this get nearby positions, we take in the float to origin. So this is basically a position of any given bird. And this gives us the range. And then using this, we can basically get out a list of the nearby entities. And again, it's really just a list of positions. Just of these float to positions here. So what we're doing is we're just checking to see if the origin, so I have this, if intersects origin and range. So basically this just checks to see if this origin is inside this range. So if it's not, we can just go ahead and return out of there, because that basically means that we're looking at a point, and that's going to be kind of like outside that current quad tree that we're looking in. So again, we basically start looking at the full big quad tree, and as long as our bird is kind of within that fully large quad tree, then we can continue on from here. So then we look at the positions of that first quad tree, which again, these are always going to have just a max of 4 points that we're looking at. So it's going to iterate through those, and then we're going to see if this this particular position that we're comparing with is basically within the range of like the kind of sight range of that individual bird. So if we're saying the bird has like a sight range of 10 units, is that point kind of within that range? If it is, then it'll add to our nearby entities list. And again, we'll kind of like iterate through that. Then the next thing that we're going to do is if there is a subdivision, then we're actually going to check the 4 individual leaf nodes for that quad tree. And we're basically just going to recursively call this get nearby positions on that. So the idea with this is it kind of ends up diving down into kind of the more specific locations of the quad tree that are most relevant to that bird. So again, we're not looking at all the birds in the entire simulation, but as we continue along with this recursive algorithm, it's going to dive down closer and closer and closer into the actual basically point where that bird is, and it's going to look at just kind of those surrounding ones. So this ends up being an n log n algorithm. So it is kind of like much more efficient in theory on paper than kind of looking at the full again n squared problem here.
Yeah, the n squared problem. That's yeah.
Have you used any type of quad tree or octree type of simulations for any?
Actually, none of those two, which is kind of strange because they're very useful. I've used them like pre-written stuff, but I did use boundary volume hierarchy. No, boundary volume hierarchy, which does a similar type of thing. I did that for the light baker. But it's a slight different use case where it fits a little bit better for that situation. Octree is faster to generate, but it's slightly slower to sample from. So if you need to build it every frame, then it's better to maybe use an Octree in a lot of situations. While bounding volume hierarchy is like, if you build it once, that's like the fastest way to go through the data. But yeah, Octree is still, yeah. But I have never written one, and I've just used it slightly through APIs, I think.
Nice. Yeah. And so, yeah, I believe that the Unity dots physics, it does kind of have its own sort of like, spatial kind of optimizations to help you find things that are kind of close by to you. So I think it would be kind of an interesting exercise to, maybe sort of compare my implementation versus, Unity's. I mean, I feel like mine is a little bit more specific and kind of, again, this is, being in a 2D project, it might be a little more efficient in that manner. But, maybe Unity's dots physics ends up being a lot better than mine. So it would be kind of a little bit of an interesting comparison.
I do think, and this is one of those things where I could be remembering wrong, but I do think Unity physics is using a boundary volume hierarchy.
Okay.
But I could be wrong on that. I think I went through the source code, but I am not sure. I think there's like, slight, like a lot of solutions for with nuances, and maybe not like straight up just one thing that does it all in a very straightforward way. I think it's in these type of highly optimized systems, there's probably several different techniques for different nuances of the problem. So maybe they have both for one for static stuff and one for dynamic stuff, and maybe they interact in some way. It's probably kind of complicated.
Yeah. Um, and then, yeah, as far as the, just finishing out the Boyd move system here, yeah, basically we just get all the nearby positions. And then from here, now we actually iterate that list. And again, this is going to be a, much smaller list than the full list of birds. Still maybe there are some birds that are a little bit further away that, maybe aren't as significant. But it significantly cuts down on the size of the list that each bird is having to compare with. So yeah, basically you can kind of see what I'm doing here is I'm just getting the difference between the current position and the other position. What I did is basically take the inverse of that, so doing a 1 divided by the difference here. Reason is because I want it to be so that birds that are closer have like a more significant force implemented on the current bird than birds that are kind of further away. As you can see, one potential issue with this is, if you have like a very, very small difference in like say the X direction where like they're only off by like 0.0005 or something. When you do 1 divided by that, then that's going to end up being a very large number. So then you end up kind of needing to, basically what I'm doing here is I'm just kind of clamping the acceleration value to basically be between negative and positive 100 in any direction here. But yeah, you can see basically all that I'm doing is I'm just kind of accumulating all these kind of differences up into kind of a single vector. And it looks like I end up actually just doing that same thing where I kind of normalize them and multiply them by the separation weight anyhow here. And then, yeah, figure out the current acceleration. And then we finally have the Boyd move job, which is a separate job where I actually, look at the velocity and then, or look at the acceleration and then set the velocity on here. And then based off of that velocity, we can tell, how much we need to move in a given frame. So then, yeah, again, that's pretty much the main things of it here. So then, yeah, basically I'll just kind of show this one more time here where again, we basically kind of have this little simulation where we have these birds kind of all flocking around. They're doing their best to kind of avoid each other while also kind of following the target position of this main center bird here. So yeah, if anybody has any kind of questions on this setup, happy to go ahead and answer them. But yeah, and again, once again, all this code is available online. Link should be in the description of this video. And yeah, if you are kind of interested in Boids in general, I would recommend just giving a look at the ECS sample project. Again, some of it may be a little bit confusing and overwhelming, but I think it's still good to learn from. There's some good information in there to just kind of see how things are set up. And yeah, it should be good to kind of check out.
Yeah, I did look up the source code in ECS, and there is something called bounding volume hierarchy in the Unity physics source
Okay.
code, which is probably most likely for the static colliders. But also, I found just a simple article which I can just post here, or not article. It's like a answer to some computer graphics question. The difference between a BVH tree and an OCT tree. And because they're they basically do the same thing. It's just it looks like I haven't read it, but if I understand the pictures right, and what I guessed is that octree is like, then you have a set size of subdivision. You always split it perfectly in 4 or in 8 in 3 dimensions.
Right.
With the BVH trees, you have where you figure out exactly the volume around a specific subset. But it just takes more time to construct that specific volume hierarchy, because you sort of enclose everything very neatly. So it's easier and faster to sample, but it's harder to figure out exactly how to enclose everything perfectly in the hierarchy. So I think like I said, they're very similar, but slightly different in performance in the 2 ways you use them.
Yeah.
All right.
Great stuff. All right. Well, yeah. And if anyone has any questions later, feel free to post them in the comments of this video, and I can either reply to them there, or depending on the question, maybe we'll address it on the next show. So yeah. Anyways, we can go ahead and kind of move into our last segment of the show here. Actually, one kind of related thing here. So this says, did the ECS sample use the BVH tree? I just noticed they call everything cells. Yeah, I can't remember exactly what they ended up using for that. If it was kind of more of a OCT tree or KD tree type thing, but
I think I would guess it's octree, similar to, or basically same thing as you showed, and that would be the case, just because rebuilding it is faster. Yeah, I think so, but I could be wrong. I haven't checked that out for ages. That's a long time ago
it's been
he
a
wrote
while.
that.
And I did see that I think they did upgrade them to the latest 1.2 version, all the sample projects, and I think that one was included in that. So yeah. Okay, so yeah, we can go ahead and get into the last portion of the show, which is our dynamic allocation. So this is kind of the fun things that we have to share with the community. So Tobias, what do you got for us this week?
Yeah, so I got the first time ever. I have a link to something that's completely unrelated to programming or game development, and I just ate some pizza a few days ago, and I just got recommended this in my YouTube algorithm. For those who haven't seen, One Bite Pizza review by Dave Portnoy is pure comedy most of the time. So check his stuff out if you like pizza and a dude talking about how good pizza is in a funny way. So yeah, I think I've seen all of them. I just think he tickles my fancy with his type of humor.
Yeah, no, they are definitely very silly. So yeah.
Yes.
Do you have is there a memorable pizza review that stands out to you?
Yeah, the one where it's like slightly not safe for work situation, where some person like grabs a pizza and it says I'm gonna take this home and feed. I don't know. It's just weird. She's talking about
Just a weird interaction.
her lady parts in a very strange way, and it's just very. And Dave is just standing there and just completely speechless, and he has no idea what's going on, and everything is just so random. And now, it's
because he's like based out of New York, right?
Yeah, exactly. He's Barstool's founder, I think.
Yeah,
Slightly spicy, controversial guy, but at least this is very safe way to enjoy his type of humor.
Nice. And then the one that I wanted to share was saw a couple people kind of reposting this one. If I can just kind of share my screen here. So this was actually I should actually share it. This was a talk that Casey Muratori gave at a recent event that this company called Futo put on, called their Don't Be Evil Summit. And it's kind of an interesting talk where they talked about it kind of a new way to approaching moderation online through this digital due process. So Casey basically pointed out kind of a number of steps that he kind of might want to implement, for say, maybe getting kicked off of like an online platform if like, maybe you're kind of like violating some of their terms of service. A lot of companies nowadays, they'll kind of might like, maybe not even give you any reason at all, or just give you some like, very generic reason as to why you're getting kicked off, and don't really give you any, specific reason or ways to appeal or anything like that. So this is just kind of like an interesting thing that he kind of like put out, where it was just kind of like sharing some ideas about, again, this kind of digital due process about, like, if a company wants to kick you off their platform, they need to give you very specific reasons as to, the rules that you're breaking. And people can kind of actually go through some process to basically appeal and say, why they should stay on that platform or whatever. Because, now that we are kind of like in this digital age where so much, of people's livelihoods kind of relies on the internet, you don't want to get kicked off of some platform overnight and, have that kind of potentially ruin your livelihood. So it definitely is an interesting talk. I would recommend checking it out. And I can go ahead and post the link there. And feel free to check out that Twitter page. They also posted a couple other interesting talks from their conference, and there was some good things in there as well.
Nice.
So with that is kind of our episode of the Hot Path Show here. We can close out here by thanking our Patreon supporters, especially our supporters over at the CPU Register tier, which is our highest tier. So thank you to eCool for your continued support over there, and to all our Patreon supporters. Once again, you can go ahead and get some cool bonuses over at patreon.com/turbomakesgames. With that, we can go ahead and close out our show today. Tobias, you got any parting words for us?
I always get the code on in my brain when I yes, but no, I don't know. I'm just happy I'm done with my stuff, and I'm very, very happy that I got to talk about it a bit for two episodes, and it's a little bit therapy to go through it and explain the different parts of it. So that's fun.
Yeah, man, very much congratulations on the release of your game. I know it's been something that you've been working on for a very long time, so that's very exciting that you finally have that out, and I'm sure that's a major relief in many senses. And I hope the game does very well for you, and I'm very much looking forward to playing through it this weekend.
Nice.
All right. Well, with that, I hope you guys all have a wonderful 420 weekend.
Nice.
And we'll see you next week for another episode of the Hot Path Show. Take care, everybody.
Bye.